Couple of minutes of silent meditation, calm the mind. Let's cultivate our motivation. So, us ordinary beings, we believe what our senses tell us. We think our eye, ear, nose, tongue, tactile consciousnesses, these tell us the truth. And if we can't see anything through them, then everything else is iffy. We say, I've got to see it to believe it. But that's a very narrow outlook because our senses are not capable of perceiving everything that exists. And even though we know this, we know that dogs can hear sounds that we can't hear, that cats can see forms that we can't see. Even though we know that our senses are not aware of everything, even though we know that sometimes our senses misapprehend things, still we believe them. And in an even deeper way, we believe that whatever appears to our senses, our physical senses, exists the way it appears. So not only is a table according to what we see or what we touch, but it is truly a table. It has a tableness quality that it is imbued with, so that it can't be anything else but a table. And in the same way, when we look at a person, be it ourselves or others, we think it's a real person. You know, there's something so special about persons. You know, you love them, you hate them, you are one. You know, being a person is really something quite special. And so we grasp at persons as inherently existent. And on top of that, we think that they're permanent and that their personality is fixed. Our personality is fixed. And then to create further obscuration, we're very attached to our perceptions. We're quite sure that they're correct. And whatever conceptual views we generate regarding these perceptions, again, they are definitely correct. So there's just a little bit of arrogance in there. Because when we start to scratch the surface of what appears to our senses and what our mind conceives, as we begin to investigate it, we see that, maybe it doesn't exist in the way it appears. But just maybe. Because as soon as we stop that contemplation, we go right back to believing everything we see and hear and think. So here it becomes kind of obvious why we have problems if we don't perceive things correctly. If we know them in a distorted way, then we're going to act on false information, and that doesn't bring good results. So since we're fortunate to have access to the teachings on the nature of reality, and those teachings can really open the door to liberation for us, then let's listen with an intention to really take them in, to think about them and check them out, and then use them, these teachings, in our lives. And again, not just to use them for ourselves, our own benefit, because I'm a person, so I am special. But seeing that we are equal with all other persons, wanting happiness, not wanting suffering, overwhelmed by afflictions, then let's try and break through all these obscurations for the benefit of self and others, and to attain full awakening in order to help others, just like others have helped us, to break through the obscurations. So generate that intention. So we may think like that and then say, well, if my senses aren't telling me the truth and things don't really exist the way they appear, then how do I know anything? Okay, we go to that extreme then. How do I know anything? So yesterday, Geshe Tafke was talking about ultimate truths and conventional truths. So the conventional truths are the things that we can agree on, yeah, in the sense that they are renowned in society, that people whose senses are not physically distorted, we can agree, yeah, this is red, this is a table, those things, yeah. So we can agree on some of the names we call things, but the way of seeing them and how they exist can still be false. Okay? And then we say, well, what's wrong? You know, if I can still see a table as a table and a person as a person, what's the problem? Yeah, even if I see them falsely, so what? Yeah, how's that a problem? I've managed so far in my life. Yeah? My life, yeah, I have some problems, but it's always other people's fault. So, you know, I'm actually doing okay. Why are you telling me I don't see reality? Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of arrogant, isn't it? Yeah. We don't even know what we don't know. Yeah. So this is, I think, one of the reasons why Buddha really emphasized checking things out and examining things, you know, and listening to teachings and really thinking about them, not just saying, oh, that sounds good. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds good. There's so many things that sound good. Which of the things that sound good do I believe? Yeah. Okay. So, searching for the self. Oh my goodness, are we really going to do that? So, it's interesting because last week I started off with the first chapter of the book, and I had thought, oh, I will just jump around and kind of teach a few bits here and there, because in 4 talks, how much can you get through? Yeah. So last week we had a session. Then I started reading, you know, to prepare for this week. And, you know, I had told you that there was this one marvelous section that was following what we ended on last time, where Nagarjuna proves that the 3 jewels exist and, you know, awakening is possible. And so I started reading that, and I loved that teaching. You know, I remember years ago His Holiness teaching that, and I just sat there going, what? Oh my God, what's he saying? It was just like, you know, going, you know. And so I was reading that, and then I just kept reading, and it was so interesting that I didn't get very far. So my idea of teaching a little bit in different chapters is out the window. Yeah, unless, I mean, I could cut the pages out and rearrange them, and then you get the idea that you might think that you're getting a little bit here and there. But actually, this bit that Nagarjuna is going through, you know, the conclusion, and I'll go through it in a minute, ends with, realizing emptiness and dependent arising come to the same point. Yeah, that they're not contradictory. And that point gets made in the next volume, realizing the profound view, when in, I think it's chapter 8, I can't remember, we go into Tsongkhapa's 3 principal aspects of the path, the verses on emptiness or on wisdom there. Yeah. And so those are in the next volume, but the two are kind of related. And I kind of had the same reaction when I first, I've been saying and we chanted here all the time, his praise to the 3 principal aspects of the path. And you chanted, da, 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 and it sounds good, dee, 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 dee. And then, you're done and you think about what you're going to do next. But when, I started going into that and learning what just like one or 2 or 3 verses was saying, it was like, oh my God, wow, it's amazing. Yeah. So, and it's amazing the amount of meaning that they can pack into a 4-line verse. And the kindness of all the lineage lamas who have unpacked that meaning so that we can understand what they're getting at. Yeah. Did you have that? Anybody have that feeling? I'm assuming that everybody online has heard Geshe Topke's teachings, because it's also sponsored by Jewel Heart. So you have a lot of teachings this month. So I'm kind of assuming everybody's listening to that. So, he was teaching all those different those 7 points that cover the Diamond Sutra. And when he was going through each one, did you see that meaning in that point before he explained what it means? You're reading the sutra, the words, sounds good. And then he says, this is about conventional bodhicitta. And you go, oh, duh, yeah, of course. Why didn't I see that? Yeah. The next verse is about ultimate bodhicitta. Oh, yeah, of course. I didn't see that one either. Okay. So really, trying to make ourselves open vessels to take all of this in. Okay. So let's get to that part from Nagarjuna. If I can, yeah, okay. Okay, for those of you who have the book, it's on page 13. You see, we haven't gotten very far in the book, but it's quality, not quantity. So we could go through the whole book and not understand much, or we could look at a few of these things. So I feel like I'm kind of arrogant even explaining this. So examine it well. I'm putting it on you. You check out whether I explained it well. Okay. So in the opening verses of chapter 24 of Treatise on the Middle Way, someone who misunderstands the meaning of emptiness thinks that Nagarjuna's refutation of inherent existence undermines both the Buddha Dharma and mundane conventions. Okay. So this person thinks Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, they don't make any sense. They're all wrong. Nagarjuna is a nihilist. And then this guy presents his argument. in the text, whenever there's a qualm or a question, it's always said by Kachik. You'll find Kachik. Kachik means one mouth. Yeah. In English, we would say big mouth. Yeah. Who's asking this question? Okay. So I'll read through everything that this person says, because they lay out this whole argument about how if things are empty of inherent existence, then they don't exist. Okay. And before I do that, remember last week we talked very briefly about the two extremes. Okay. The nihilistic extreme, which comes in many forms, denying cause and effect, or just denying the existence of phenomena altogether. And then the absolutist extreme of saying that things are inherently existent. They have their own nature. Okay. So these are the two extremes. And we, go back and forth between the two of them. We can tell you all about the two extremes and describe them and give examples of dimwits who believe them. And then we go back and forth between the two of them. Okay? It inherently exists. That's our usual extreme. Everything has its own nature. And then we think about emptiness and we say, oh, no, it doesn't. Oh, then it doesn't exist. If it doesn't inherently exist, then it doesn't exist at all. And then you say, but things do exist. There's something there. So if they exist, they must inherently exist. Okay, so you see. And the confusion, why we bounce back and forth, is we confuse inherent existence with existence. And when we say existence, we mean conventional existence. There you go. Conventional existence. Conventional existence is false. How come you're telling me that I should believe conventional existence when it's false? You're contradicting yourself. Yeah? That's an interesting one to have to deal with. Yeah? But the thing is that conventional existence is the only kind of existence. Because if you ask, do things exist ultimately? Ultimately here means when you examine them with reasoning, can you find what they are really? And when we do that, we can't find them. So they don't ultimately exist. The only way things can exist is conventionally, but that's false. But it still kind of works, and it's the only kind of existence we have. Okay, so we confuse, one of our problems is we confuse inherent existence with existence. So if we negate inherent existence, we negate conventional existence too. Okay? But we have a hard time accepting conventional existence as just conventional existence because we think it inherently exists. If this is confusing, there's a good reason why. Okay. The other mistake we make, why we go seesaw between the two extremes, is we think if it's empty of inherent existence, then it doesn't exist at all. Yeah. We think emptiness means emptiness of all existence. It doesn't. It just means emptiness of inherent existence. Yeah. And when we say existence, We think inherent existence, but just the word existence doesn't mean that things are inherently existent. Okay? So this is the whole mistake. If it exists, it must inherently exist. If it's empty of inherent existence, then it doesn't exist at all. Do, 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 do. And we go back and forth. Okay, so here's what Kachik has to say. Yeah, so Big Mouth is laying it out. So if all these were empty of inherent existence, there would be no arising and no disintegration. And it would absurdly follow for you, Nagarjuna, that the four truths of the Aryas would not exist. Woo, what an accusation to make of Nagarjuna. Okay, I won't explain it. I just want to go through so you can get a taste first. Since the four truths, true dukkha, true cause, true cessation, true path, if these did not exist, knowing, thoroughly abandoning, meditating on, and actualizing them would not be logically feasible. Since the four truths, since these would not exist, the four fruits would not exist. When it says fruit, it's not talking about pears and apples. Okay? It's talking about stream entry. Once enters, non-returners, and arhats. Okay? So those states would not exist. When the fruits do not exist, abiders, people who have attained those fruits, abiders in the fruit would not exist. And approachers, those who are approaching that realization, also would not exist. Okay? If those 8 persons did not exist, the spiritual community, the Sangha, would not exist. Woo! He's really... And because the four truths would not exist, the doctrine, the Dharma jewel of the excellent would also not exist. So this guy's negating everything. If the doctrine and the spiritual community did not exist, how would the Buddhas exist? If emptiness is construed in this way, the existence of the 3 jewels is undermined. Big problems. The existence of effects, what is not the doctrine itself, and all conventions of the world, all these are undermined. So nothing exists. That's quite an argument, isn't it? You know, starting out with if things are empty of inherent existence, and he's showing all his reasons why then nothing exists. It sounds very good, doesn't it? Yeah? To our mind, it sounds very good. It makes complete sense. Yeah? Okay. The objector says that if everything is empty of inherent existence, nothing could arise and cease. Why not? Okay? Because for things to be empty of inherent existence, it would mean that they would have their own self-generating nature. Yeah, that was independent of all other factors. Okay, so if the thermos, my teachers used to use flowers, but I have thermoses. Okay, if the thermos were empty of inherent existence, not empty of water, but empty of inherent existence, and it has its own nature inside of it, as a thermos, because that's what we all see, okay, then it couldn't come into being and it couldn't disintegrate. Why not? Because something that has its own inherent nature inside there that generates itself and exists by itself doesn't depend on causes and conditions. Yeah, it's independent of causes and conditions. If there's no causes and conditions, then nothing can be produced, so there's no arising, and nothing ceases because there's no disintegration. Okay? So this is an argument that they come back to a lot. If it inherently exists, then it must be permanent, because it can't be affected by causes and conditions. Yeah. But that is the opposite of what we know. I mean, we do know a few things. We're not totally dumb. We do know that, back to our gardening class, that sprouts arise from seeds. Yeah. We know that this table arose from wood, together with the efforts of the people who made it, and the sawyer and all sorts of other people involved too. Okay? But he's saying, if it's empty, if it has its own nature, then it can't arise and cease. And that's true, it couldn't. It would be static, permanent, unchanging. That's our first clue that his argument is wrong. Okay? But let's just follow his argument. If you don't catch that, then you go on and you say, it would absurdly follow for you that the four truths of the Aryas would not exist. Why not? Well, if we talk about true dukkha, true suffering, and true cause, they have a cause and effect relationship. So if they were inherently existent, they couldn't have a cause and effect relationship. And by practicing true paths, that would not lead to actualizing true cessations. Paths would be paths, cessations would be cessations. They would, again, no relationship between them because they all have their own nature. Yeah. Jeffrey calls it self-instituting. When I first heard that term, I didn't like it. But when I think about it, self-generating, that's an easier word, I think. It's like, it generates, it comes from itself. It is itself. There's a self in there, something that it is. Okay, so since the four truths would not exist, then knowing them, or knowing thoroughly, that's what you do with true cessations. Remember, Buddha said true cessations are to be known, true causes are to be abandoned, true paths are to be realized, true cessations are to be actualized. Okay? But if the four truths didn't exist, then you couldn't know true dukkha, you couldn't abandon true causes, you couldn't meditate on true paths, you couldn't actualize true cessation because none of them existed. Okay. Yeah. So cross that off. Then, Kachik goes on. Since those things would not exist, then the four fruits, the states of various levels of realization of the four truths, also could not exist. Okay? So a stream enterer, that's the first experience of directly perceiving nirvana, that's out the window. Okay, once returner, somebody who has realized nirvana, but they only return to the desire realm. Yeah, one more time. Stream enters can return, some people say 3 times, some people say 7 times to the desire realm. Once returners, only 1 time. Non-returners, you never get born in the desire realm again. Yippee! Or, oh, boo-hoo, I love the desire realm. It's so exciting. Yeah? Okay. So those people who had attained those levels and the level of arhat, yeah, where you've abandoned all the afflictions and the karma that causes rebirth, that would, you couldn't do that. Okay. And then, so abiders in the fruit would not exist, and the approachers, the people who are meditating on the paths to become an abider, those also would not exist. Okay. And then he goes on, he says, if these 8 persons, the 4 approachers, the 4 abiders, didn't exist, then the Sangha doesn't exist. Yeah. Because if we talk from the perspective of the Pali tradition, those 8 form the Sangha. From the perspective of the Mahayana tradition, people from on the paths of seeing, meditation and no more learning form the Sangha. Okay. So the Sangha, here it's just going across according to what the Pali tradition says. Okay, if those 8 persons didn't exist, the Sangha community wouldn't exist. Cross out one of the 3 jewels. Because the 4 truths would not exist, the doctrine of the excellent also would not exist. So the Dharma teachings, that's the doctrine of the excellent. Yeah, the Dharma teachings wouldn't exist. Cross out the Dharma jewel. Okay, 2 down. And if the doctrine and the spiritual community did not exist, how could the Buddha exist? Yeah. How could the Buddha who taught the Dharma exist if there's no Dharma? And if there's no Dharma, how could the Sangha exist? Because the Sangha is the ones who have realized it directly. Okay. So you've just negated all 3 jewels. Yeah. If emptiness is construed in this way, the existence of the 3 jewels is undermined. So then you aren't even a Buddhist. What in the world are you believing? You know, Kachik's really going through for the throat here. Okay. And then he says the existence of effects. You know, so the whole doctrine of karma and its effects, cause and effects, out the window. Okay. What is not the Dharma? You know, being able to discern what is the Dharma, what isn't the Dharma, all those wrong views, that's out the window. Yeah, the doctrine itself, the Dharma teachings, gone. And not only that, but all conventions of the world also don't exist. So he's just gone across the board. Okay. So, and it all it all goes back to saying if things are empty of inherent existence, then there's no arising and no disintegration. Okay. Incredible argument, isn't it? Would you think of that? Yeah, it sounds like a very good argument. What Nagarjuna does, I didn't write all of his verses in here, but he goes through and proves the exact opposite using the same things. Yeah. Since things are empty of inherent existence, there is arising and disintegration. Yeah. Since there's arising and disintegration, there are the 4 truths. And he goes on like that. Okay. So the objector says if everything is empty of inherent existence, nothing could arise and cease. That means we don't even exist. The book doesn't exist. Yeah. Then he's like saying we're hallucinating, but then our hallucinations wouldn't even exist because nothing exists. So then what do you do? Okay, nothing could arise and cease, and thus true dukkha and true origins would not arise and not cease. Okay, so this is what I just explained, going through all of that. So Nagarjuna replies that this person has misunderstood the nature of emptiness, the purpose of emptiness, and its meaning, which is the name of this section, if you go back a few pages. Okay? So the nature, the purpose, the meaning of emptiness. And this person's misunderstood, and as a result, his mind is proliferating with many pernicious misconceptions. Has your mind ever proliferated with... Yeah, we have misconceptions all the time, but also philosophical misconceptions, things like this. I mean, when I look back upon what, I went through the stage in my life where I tried really hard to believe in God, so that's believing in the absolutist view. Yeah, things are inherently existent, and a self-instituting God created that. I believed that for a while. Then when I started asking questions, I couldn't believe that anymore. And then I went to the other extreme of my actions have no ethical value. I can do whatever I want, and as long as I don't get caught, there's, by the worldly authorities, nothing bad is going to happen to me. Woo-hoo! I don't want to tell you everything I did under that belief. Yeah, it's a philosophical belief, and it lets you do anything you want to do because, there's no ethical value to your actions. Yeah, your actions don't bring results unless you get caught by worldly authorities. But, when you're in your late teens and early 20s, who cares about worldly authorities? You wiggle your way, somewhere. Yeah. You lie to your parents. Whatever you need to do. Yeah. And some people keep doing this as adults. Okay. So, if you look in your life, I don't know if you can see, do you have you held any of these kind of views? And, what have you done holding these kind of wrong views in your life? So it's not, when they talk about wrong views, it's not, they're not talking about some other person. Yeah. Like all these nasty people who lie and cheat and, all the people who believe in this conspiracy theories. It's not, Buddha's not talking about they're included, but they're not the real audience. We're the real audience. Yeah? And it's hard to get through to us because we think we're right. Okay. So Nagarjuna says that this person has misunderstood the nature of emptiness, its purpose, and its meaning. And as a result, his mind is proliferating with many pernicious conceptions. Yeah. Like somebody who every time they open their mouth, a lie comes out. Our mind kind of can be like that sometimes. Nagarjuna then explains that the nature of emptiness is peaceful, quiescent. Yeah? Peace, quiescent, refers to nirvana, which is linked with emptiness. Okay? Or emptiness leads to nirvana. Emptiness, when you see emptiness, you will come to know nirvana, clearing away all the obscurations. Okay, so the nature of emptiness is peaceful and not fabricated by the mental elaborations of inherent existence. Okay, that's the nature of emptiness. It is the absence of all dualistic appearance. Yeah, dualistic appearance, there's many different meanings of dualism. Yeah, here it's talking about the appearance of an inherently existent subject and an inherently existent object that's being cognized. Okay, so emptiness is the absence of inherently existent subjects and objects. The purpose, as the second one, of realizing emptiness is to eliminate afflictions, polluted karma, those are the afflictive obscurations, and to remove cognitive obscurations, the latencies of the afflictions, and the subtle dualistic appearance that they bring. And then the meaning of emptiness is what's the meaning of emptiness? Dependent arising. But emptiness talks about how things don't exist, and dependent arising talks about how they do exist. How do they go together? Yeah. So here we are, absolutism and nihilism again. Okay. They say that this is the most difficult part of realizing the correct view, is seeing how things are empty of inherent existence, and yet they arise dependently. So they exist conventionally. They say that's the hardest thing. But we say the words and we think, oh yeah, that's good. What else is next? Yeah? But when you really think about it, when there's no inherent existence, how do you have dependent arising? And then Nagarjuna says, well, if you don't have emptiness, then you don't have dependent arising, then nothing exists. So when Nagarjuna is refusing, Mr. Kachik, he says, okay, well, you say if things are empty, they don't exist. I'm saying if things inherently exist, if they aren't empty, then they don't exist. Opposite. Yeah. And why does Nagarjuna say that? Because emptiness and dependent arising come to the same point. Okay. So if things are not empty, that means they would exist inherently with their own nature. Yeah. So if things were not empty, they would be inherently existent. And we just talked about how if they're inherently existent, they couldn't exist at all, because they would already have their own self-instituting nature. They would exist from their own side and be independent of causes and conditions. Okay, so then if things weren't empty and they're independent of causes and conditions, name one functioning thing that is independent. Functioning things are impermanent, remember? Yeah. Can you name a functioning thing that has no causes and conditions? Yeah. But if they inherently existed, they wouldn't have causes and conditions. Okay? So he flips the opponent's argument completely around. Okay. Nagarjuna then directly confronts the objector's points. I thought he already did. Saying that his understanding is completely backward and the situation is the opposite of what he believes. Okay. The fact that all phenomena are empty of inherent existence allows things to function. They allow things to arise, to cease. They allow for the relationships of samsara and nirvana. Yeah. They allow for things to interact and bring new things because they're empty. If they had their own natures, that couldn't be possible. So if phenomena existed independent of all other factors, they couldn't interact with other factors and thus couldn't arise, change, function, or cease. So everything would be permanent if things weren't empty. Okay, so then Nagarjuna says, this is a very famous quote here, "For whom emptiness is feasible, all is feasible. For whom emptiness is not feasible, all is not feasible." So if emptiness makes sense, then everything is possible. If emptiness doesn't exist, then nothing makes sense. Yeah. This is kind of the opposite of how we see things now. Yeah. And that showed, it shows us our ignorance. I think that's one of the big things. When you start to practice Dharma, you realize how dumb you are. Yeah? At least that's been my experience. Yeah? I just, you start looking at what you think, and it's like, that's dumb. Yeah? Why do I think that? Yeah. Yes, for example, okay? So yesterday I was irritated at somebody. They had written an email with a question. I had explained the answer, sent it off, and then they wrote back again and said the famous 2 words, "Yes, but." Okay, and went into these things. And what do you mean, yes, but? I explained it clearly. Think about it, you jerk, and don't write me back right away. I didn't say that. This was what was going on in my mind. It's like they had a perfectly good, explanation, and they didn't stop to think about it. It just didn't make sense to them right away, so they write back, saying, "Yes, but," and repeating their argument. And why are you wasting my time? What kind of jerk are you? Okay. Then, okay, so, did you ever have those kind of thoughts? Yeah? Okay. So this arose. Then, so I'm irritated. Yeah. When you're irritated, you don't forget that you're irritated, do you? Yeah. You just remain irritated. And so I'm going throughout the day. And then I really sat up and thought about it. And I thought, that guy, all he was really saying was, on first thought, I have a different view, and I would like you to just acknowledge that I have a different view and enter into a discussion with me. That's all he was saying. He wasn't like, being disrespectful, like, oh, what did you say? You wrote this email with what you called an answer, and it's not. So, he wasn't saying that. He was just saying, I need, I need somebody to hear what my view is and to engage in some discussion. That's all. And so when I realized that, then I realized, boy, getting irritated was really stupid. Why was I getting irritated? This guy didn't mean, the person didn't mean any harm. They weren't doing anything stupid. Yeah. It was me that had the wrong view. It was me that was stupid. Okay. So, as you go through your life, once you're a Dharma practitioner, this happens all the time. You realize what you're thinking is just stupid. Yeah. I remember Jeffrey Hopkins telling the story about how, I won't get the story absolutely right because I heard it a long time ago. So, but he was with one of his teachers. They were in a temple, looking at it. And the teacher said, "What's that?" Whatever it was. And Jeffrey gave an answer which he thought was correct. And his teacher said, "No." And Jeffrey's conclusion was, when you practice Dharma, you have to get used to being wrong. And I think that's good advice. Yeah. When you practice, you have to get used to looking at your own thoughts and seeing that they're wrong. And if we do that, then when somebody else tells us, that we're thinking in the wrong way, that we're a jerk, we might say, yeah, you're right. Of course, they may be saying that we're a jerk in something that we're wrong, but we know, we have the right view of it. But still, learning to accept that we're wrong a lot of times. Yeah. But we don't like being wrong, do we? Whatever we believe is right. Why? Because it's what I believe. And what I believe is sacrosanct. It's always right. You should believe the same thing. Yeah, don't you agree? No, you don't agree. You don't think everything I believe is always right. Gotta get used to being wrong. It's quite humbling, actually, I think the more you practice, the more you realize how wrong you are. And the more you see how out of touch with reality the way you see things is. Yeah. Your ancient, antique, I don't know, something that your great-great-great-great-great-grandparents owned that is worth $1 million because it's so antique. Yeah. The cat just pushed it off the table and it broke. My godzillion dollar antique, whatever, is broken. This is horrible. It's a disaster. Really? Really? It's really bad? When you know about Dharma, what's the real disaster? Getting born again in samsara. That's the real disaster. Yeah? Your ancient antique thing broken? It doesn't make you get born again in samsara. Anyway, it's created by causes and conditions. It's going to break. It's going to disintegrate. Why are we so upset about it? Yeah. And it doesn't send us to the lower realms. Yeah. Lama Yeshe used to say, come, come, go, go. Yeah. So you inherit this ancient antique, come, come. The cat pushes it off the table and it breaks. Go, go. It's not a big deal. But we make it one. Yeah, we make it one. And we might even hold a grudge against the cat forever and ever and ever. This stupid cat, it should know better. It should know that this was worth gazillions of dollars, you know? And they just broke at the source of all their future cat food. They just broke. Yeah. Okay. Since phenomena are empty by nature, all the faults the objector, Mr. Kachik, accuses the Madhyamikas of having actually accrue to him. Nagarjuna confronts the objector with the undesirable consequence of wrong views. So he says, if all of these were not empty of inherent existence, there would be no arising and no disintegration. And it would absurdly follow for you that the four truths of the Aryas would not exist. So again, it would go through each of those things, you know, starting with, if they weren't empty, then this and this and this and this, okay? So because phenomena lack inherent existence, they exist dependently. True dukkha arises dependent on its causes, true origins. Yeah. True origins can be overcome by realizing true paths. That's the fourth truth, which bring true cessations, the third truth. True paths and true cessations are the Dharma jewel, and the Sangha jewel, which includes the 8 approachers and abiders to stream entry and so on, and the Arya Bodhisattvas have actualized the Dharma. Okay. Since the Sangha jewel then is feasible, the Buddha jewel is also possible. And then all mundane and supramundane realizations and attainments are feasible, so enlightenment can be attained. And so are cause and effect of all worldly conventions. Now, I was thinking the other day, again, after Geshe Topke's teachings, a really good teacher when they say the same things you've heard many times before and it whacks you in the face. So that's what his teachings often do for me. So yeah, that's why I look so old. I'm always getting whacked. I'm still just 21, it's Geshe doing this to me. So, okay. This is something really dumb, that we all know, but it kind of, smacked me. And I began to think, every time I or anybody else complains, why is this happening? I want this to happen. I work so hard for this to happen, and instead that is happening. Do you ever have that problem? I worked so hard to achieve this, and it didn't come into being. The society is unfair. I'm oppressed. It's this and that, and we blame other people. And I thought, no, all it is that we haven't created all the causes and conditions for it to exist. That's all. Yeah. Why didn't things turn out the way I want them to turn out? Because the causes and conditions for it don't exist. So why am I having, a fit and throwing a temper tantrum about this? Because it's perfectly reasonable. If you don't have all the causes and conditions, the result doesn't come. Yeah. So it's so easy to say and understand intellectually. But when it happens in your life and you don't get what you want and things don't turn out the way you plan them and organize them and you thought you had control over every small thing, yeah, then we fall apart. But all it is the causes and conditions have not been created. So chill out and go back and create the causes and conditions. Yeah. Because you know how it is when we don't get what we want, things that aren't happening the way we want. We go, it's not fair. What do I do now? Create the causes and conditions. It's quite simple. We go, the whole thing is ending. Okay. So in this way, Nagarjuna clarifies that the meaning of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra's statements about emptiness are definitive and can be understood just as they are expressed. Okay. In addition, the above argument clears away all doubt regarding the existence of the three jewels and the four truths, because phenomena are empty and arise dependent on other factors. And so because of that, all phenomena in samsara and nirvana are feasible. Yeah. Sometimes we say, how can a human being be born in the lower realms? That just isn't possible. Once you're a human being, you have human intelligence. How can you be reborn as a grasshopper? That doesn't make any sense. How I can imagine a grasshopper, being born as a human being, but why can a human being be born as a grasshopper? It doesn't make any sense. I can't be reborn as a grasshopper. Yeah. Well, if you create the causes and conditions, you can. Because things are empty of inherent existence, yeah, the results the causes that we create bring concordant results that are capable of being produced by those causes. Okay, so if we create the cause for a lower realm, to be born in a lower realm, there's no way we're going to get a good rebirth. You created the causes. We say this to teenagers all the time, yeah, when they get in trouble. Yeah, parents, well, none of you are parents. Are any of you parents that I don't know about? Yeah, then, that's what when teenagers misbehave and they get in trouble, you say, well, you did that. You brought that on yourself. Yeah, what you're really saying is, you jerk, you should have listened to me a long time ago. Why are you being so rebellious? Now you got what you deserved and maybe you'll listen to me. So often we say things and we have a subtext there, that. But yeah, if you create the cause, the result's coming. So why do we throw a fit when the result's there? Okay. Oh, we're up to page 15. We are speeding along here. Okay, now I had planned at least to talk about some more, but I'm looking at the clock now. Maybe people have some causes, some questions. Yeah, if you have some questions, or you have some comments. Yeah, so online, feel free to ask them. I guess put them in the chat box and Kathy will read them to me.
Yeah, so when we try to prove that things don't exist ultimately, one of the things that we do is we come up with different ways of refuting, or by parts, or by causes, or, by different methods. And like, I feel like it intellectually, it's like, you're like, yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
But then it doesn't click. Like, it doesn't like, I'm just curious, like, how do you know when you're like refuting the ultimate existence in many ways, like that you've completed it? Like, okay, now there can be no other way that it can be refuted. Like you've sort
I
of
think,
hit all.
I haven't attained that, but I think it must be just some feeling inside yourself of, you know it, it corresponds. You admire the Buddha, you know what the Buddha's teachings are, and what you're, thinking is corresponding with that. And then it's also good, check with your teacher. Yeah. Check with somebody who knows more, because sometimes we can create all sorts of, screwy theories. Yeah. And I think your whole perspective changes. Yeah. If you really understand something deeply, your whole perspective changes. Like just even, for example, understanding impermanence, or just something very, very simple. We all know we're going to die, right? Yeah. We all know we're going to die. Yeah. I think when you get a real sense that you're going to die, you don't just say, oh yeah, we're all going to die. There's something inside you that shakes and like, it's like, oh boy, this is really different than what I thought it is. Yeah. Yeah. There's your whole view changes. Yeah. But it takes a lot of repetition, familiarization, meditating on things again and again and again to get whatever small glimpse we have to last a little bit longer. Yeah, we really need to familiarize ourselves with it. Mm-hmm. Yeah?
So we do have another question.
Oh, sure.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
It's from Bulent here in our group. Mm-hmm. And he's asking if all is dependent arising and a play cause and effect, that would everything unfold in a predetermined way? Where does our control to make any change come into play?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This is a question that comes very often. You know what I find it very, very interesting is that in Western culture, because of Christianity, the question of free will and predetermination is a big, big question. Okay? It's interesting because the Indian scholars don't take that up. Yeah? They don't take up, do they? The whole thing of, do we have free will or are things predetermined? They just say they're dependent arising. Yeah? Yeah. Okay, no, okay. Yeah, so it's interesting for me that something that is such a big issue in Western culture, and you can see it's because of the theory that there's a God that controls. Yeah. It's not taken up by the great Indian thinkers. Yeah. And they just say everything's dependent arising. And then His Holiness tops that off with, you don't know the future until it happens. Yeah. Because we're really stuck with, is it everything fate? Yeah. Is it, it's predetermined, it's fated, this is all, it's secure this is going to happen. And we'll even bring in some ideas of, all the causes for it are created, so this is fated, it's definitely going to happen. Okay, because all the causes and conditions are there. But what's wrong with that argument is that the causes and conditions are not permanent. They're changing every single moment also. And so something that could be a strong cause becomes a weak one. Yeah, something that was a weak condition can become a strong one. You can decide something else, and then that means these causes and conditions ripen, whereas if you choose that, the other causes and conditions ripen. Yeah, and this is why it's so important. We can't just say everything's due to karma, like it's predetermined and it's fated. Because we're the ones who put ourselves in different conditions, and what conditions we put ourselves in influences what causes and conditions come together to produce a certain result. So it's not fated and predetermined. And in Buddhism, there's no controller of the universe, no external divine being that controls what happens in the universe. It's simply cause and effect, all the different kinds of causes and effects. Yeah. Okay, one last question. Yeah.
This is just a sticky point for me around language. Sometimes I get a little bit stuck in looking at emptiness as an entity as opposed to the mind realizing emptiness. Right? So in the statement, Nagarjuna explains that the nature of emptiness is peaceful and quiescent. Mm-hmm. Are we inferring that it's the mind that is realizing emptiness that is peaceful and quiescent? Does that come along with it? Right?
I hope so.
Yeah, but are they? So there's something about the distinction between what is emptiness, what is the wisdom realizing it, and what's the fusion between those?
Yeah.
I can't sort them out sometimes.
Yeah, well, sometimes in the verses it means both things. I mean, emptiness, is quiescent. Remember I said quiescent means nirvana? Yeah. So it is talking about emptiness. Emptiness is peace. Okay. Yeah.
I'm making it objective.
Yeah. But, and the mind that realizes emptiness, you would hope would be peaceful. Okay. But it's actually emphasizing emptiness when it's saying that. But the mind, you can throw the mind into. The nature of that mind is empty. Yeah. Okay. Were there any more questions from online people?
Yes, there was one other one. If
Okay.
you have a little time, is that okay?
Yeah.
This is from Ted and Fran, and they ask, which has a better rebirth, a peaceful grasshopper or a human with such negative karma as to be a mass murderer?
Actually, if you're looking at just the rebirth, not the action that somebody does in that rebirth, but just the body and the 5 aggregates that you get from being reborn in a certain realm, that human being has a better rebirth. Unfortunately, what has happened is that person has not used their good rebirth to create virtue and to create happiness in this world and happiness for others and happiness in future lives. They've totally misused their rebirth. Yeah. But just those 5 aggregates as a human being give you so much more ability and potential in that lifetime to understand the Dharma than a grasshopper's aggregates. Yeah. So that, that's why, just even yesterday when Geshe-la gave the motivation, and many times when he gives motivations, we have a precious human life. If we don't use it now, what's going to happen to us? If we don't get another good rebirth in the next life, what's going to happen, And so really encouraging us to use our rebirth, the human aggregates in a positive way. Okay, so let's dedicate.